just wanted to start out real quick. I assume everyone, this is your second day, maybe you missed yesterday, but if you were attend yesterday, today, we've had some great speakers, and we've given them a round of applause. We've met them out in the hallways. We've talked with them a little bit here and there. Great speakers, great topics. I do want to have a special call out. What did you guys think of Albert's presentation yesterday? You remember Albert? I couldn't stop thinking about that all night long ago. He talked about some very tough topics. And to show that amount of courage or bravery to get in front of a group this size and talk about something so personal, it resonated with me and it hit home. So I don't know if Albert's here today. No, he's not. And anyways, he had a great talk. So to get it started, I'm Dillon Winspear. Let's start out with a little bit of an activity. Will everyone stand up? Cool. So here's what I want to do. We're going to kind of filter out the audience here real quick. Go ahead and sit down if you are in the first year of your professional product-centric career. Okay, a couple people sitting down. Those are the individuals who've kind of broken their way into the field. Congratulations, because it is a tough field to get into. Congratulations again. Go ahead and sit down if you're in maybe that, I guess, first year to 6 years. If you've been in there first year to 6 years in the product space, go ahead and sit down. Okay, those individuals, and we're back. Those individuals are, maybe approaching senior status, or maybe they've already achieved that title. So congratulations for working your tail off and getting to it. Remain standing if you're a manager. Okay? Remain standing if you're a manager. Now, remain standing if you took that job for a reason other than money. I'm just kidding. You don't have to do that. Go ahead and take a seat. I appreciate that. I wanted to just see a little bit of the demographics here. If you're here, I imagine that you're an intentional, laser-focused individual who's got big career goals and aspirations. I mean, ultimately, that's why you attend a conference like this. So maybe if that is you, let's see if this scenario resonates with you as well. You came out of school, you came out of a boot camp. What's the first goal that you set? You're like, I really need that internship. I really need to get that first job position. And you get yourself laser focused on wanting to get into that first position, and then you achieved it. Congratulations. And then what did you do? You set your next goal, and more likely than not, that next goal is I want to become senior. I need to become a senior designer or whatever, product manager, whatever it may be. I just need to be senior. If I could just get that title, I could really showcase my skill sets. And then you become senior. Congratulations, you made it there. I found, though, that a lot of people don't know what to do after that. Then what? Maybe you've said this, well, I guess I'll manage. Today, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a project I worked on over the last couple months. I did this while I was a director of UX at Domo. I have since left. It hurts my heart. I've got some Domo team here today, and I miss them tremendously. I'm currently at Awardco, and we're implementing some of these things that I'm going to be sharing with you today. So I want to start with a story of why we started tackling this project. Rewinding back the clock to the end of 2019, I'm sitting with another director of mine at Domo, and he and I are putting together proposals for, who on our team needs to get promoted, who needs to get a pay raise or a merit increase. We typically do this at the end of the year. They go into effect at the beginning of the year. Everyone's really excited. It's a great time of year for everyone. But then the vid happens, right? And the vid throws everything out of whack. Beginning of 2020, promotions and pay raises, they kind of gets put on pause. A lot of us were kind of going, well, let's hold off on these things until we know a little bit more. Unfortunately, that little bit more wasn't great. It didn't stop the team, though. Our team at Domo, they kept their foot on the gas. They set goals, they achieved goals, they improved themselves, they up-leveled themselves. Our product saw the benefits. We continued to deliver those quality products. And it actually ended up being a pretty good year for Domo. As that fiscal year of 2020 came to a close, Domo took huge steps in the industry. We were on our way to becoming a leader in the augmented BI space by the Forrester Research Company. It was a good fiscal year. So we get to the end of 2020, and now it's time to resubmit these proposals, resubmit for who needs promotions and pay raises. And we go through the effort, but then something happened. Unfortunately, we were in the position of like, you know what, let's just take what we had all put together last year in 2019, and let's just submit it again for this year, 2020, since 2019 proposals never went into effect. Let's use them instead. Well, that led to a little bit of an issue for us. For our tenured UX designers, well, they took that year of 2020 and continued to up-level. They continued to improve their skill set. So a year of more practice and experience, some of them were now ready to take the next step that may not have been recommended the year before. So for our tenured designers, it put them in a little bit of a bind. For our recent hires, let's say you got hired just 3-4 months before COVID happened, maybe we didn't recommend a promotion or a pay raise for you at that point in time, but now it's been 15 or 16 months and you are on track for promotion. Well, that wasn't in our bid from the year prior, so what do we do with them? And then finally, these new hires, we had seats to fill. Domo still has seats to fill. I'm sure you guys like that call out, right? Yeah, they still have seats to fill. And they're trying to get more people in the door. Well, how do we get more people in the door into the right position and title and pay when the rest of our team is so out of whack? It was a tough position. So we met with I say we met with everyone. We did meet with everyone. We met with everyone on the team. We did team-wide one-on-ones, and there wasn't a single person on the team who didn't have some question or another regarding, what goes on next? What's happening? What am I shooting for? Everyone wanted to know where their career was heading. The individuals on our team, they wanted to reestablish like a personal career trajectory plan, and as a whole, we needed the opportunity to relook at some of that documentation or where they could go. We needed new milestones for their career track. So the truth is, if you've built a relationship with your team, they'll tell you what they want, what they really, really want. And come on, you can't pass up a Spice Girls reference. So in our situation, we learned that our team as a whole, they wanted a clear North Star. They wanted a goal. They wanted something to aim at. They wanted to know where their career could be in the next few years. So we needed to be able to communicate to them. And listen, for those managers who stood up at the beginning, if you're not communicating the career track or the trajectory for someone on your team, somebody else will do it for you. And they'll probably take that designer from your team. So again, be proactive and get on top of that. As expected, after these one-on-ones, the team had different aspirations. Some wanted to dive deeper into specific design skill sets. Others wanted to be part of strategy. Others wanted to mentor. It was a wide range of what they wanted to do next. But across the board, the team wanted consistent pay increases, and they wanted opportunities to progress. They wanted to know what their next milestone was. So it was after these conversations, we worked on figuring out how we could present a clear visualization for what career trajectory looked like at Domo. And this is ultimately kind of the basis of what I want to chat about today. Here's what we came up with. What you're looking at here is a hell of a ton of job titles. And I'm going to make sense of this here in just a second. This middle column right here is our individual contributor track. Working your way from an associate level UX designer to a senior UX designer all the way up to a UX architect. That's where they could go on a career trajectory of an individual contributor. Our management track right next to it. You can see those steps from design manager all the way up to senior director. However, we wanted all of our UX designers on our team to achieve at least the level of senior UX design, improving their skill sets before they took on more management capacities. So once they became senior, they had this opportunity to kind of diverge and go down a management track. This far left column, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Radford. Raise your hands maybe. Anyone familiar with what Radford is? Handful of it. That's the other group, huh? You guys were all like the HR personnel, was that right? Maybe, yeah, okay, hi. Radford levels. Let me give you a brief synopsis of what Radford is. It's a global job leveling approach that looks at pay scales, attributes them to pay codes, and then responsibilities as well. So HR will typically use this to help determine pay brackets for job titles. Again, it's a reputable source. It's not the end-all, be-all. Your company may use something different, but it's what we were using at Domo. For the sake of this presentation, that's all you need to know is that Domo was using Radford, and we were trying to stick to 6 different levels. As we look at this down here, let's make sense of why we've got so many titles, and specifically looking at level 2, 3, and 4, we've got multiple titles in those levels. One of the things that Radford gives us is pay percentiles. They'll say, well, level 2, here's what the 25th percentile is getting paid, the 50th percentile is getting paid, and the 75th percentile is getting paid. We use that to attribute it to these job titles. So if you're a UX 1 at Domo, you can get paid in the 25th percentile of the level 2 bracket. If you get promoted to UX 2, you're in the 50th percentile, UX 3, the 75th percentile. And it works. It helps us kind of communicate to our team what they can expect in the future. Now, as you get promoted, let's say you graduate from UX 3 and you're now a senior UX designer 1. You restart. You're back in the 25th percentile, but you're doing that at level 3. And structuring it this way, we make these pay bumps more consistent between these promotions. Previously, we had, I think, 2 titles and maybe that level 2. So maybe they spent a year at UX 1 and then they got bumped to UX 2, and that pay increase wasn't very significant, but if you jump from UX 2 to senior, bam, you got this big pay bump. It's tough to work with, right? Because a lot of people would kind of get beaten down when they realize, like, well, this isn't my big year, so I guess I have to wait it out for next year until I get that big pay bump I'm looking for. We wanted to go away from that. The other thing I want to point out in these career tracks is this right here. Recognize that our senior UX 3 designers on that IC path can get paid just as much as a design manager 2. This means you don't need to get into management if management isn't your skill set, but there's comparable salaries so that, again, there's opportunities for you to grow. Yeah, I guess what was more important for us to recognize outside of just pay is, like, where do your natural skill sets align? You don't need to go into management if you want to just get paid more. We've got pay on both sides of these, but what is your skill set and where do you want to go? Where are you receiving job satisfaction? That's what we wanted to look at. So understanding kind of this career track outline here, there's a couple more things that I want to point out. First, I want to point out that this management track is not another step in the ladder. It's a completely different ladder altogether. And what that means is, like, the skill sets that made you a standout UX designer in maybe level 2, what helped you get your job and you worked your way from UX 1 to UX 3 and all the way up to senior, that skill set that you were recognized for is not the same skill set that will make you an effective manager. And therefore, it is not another step on the ladder. It's a completely different ladder altogether. For that reason, I want to call it 2 other things. How can you discover if management is in your natural skill set? Your managers may need to provide you opportunities to start dipping your toes into those management-like tasks. What that may look like is you might start sitting in job interviews, conducting those job interviews, or maybe participating in running staff meetings. You need to get a taste of what these management-like tasks are in order for you to identify, is this something that resonates with you or not? You may absolutely hate it, and that's okay. You may like it, and that's okay. Again, it's just important for us to help you understand where do your strengths align. The second thing I wanted to point out is making the jump from, IC to management track is not writing your name in stone. It's not sealing this with the design gods that you're going to be a manager from here on out. We wanted to allow fluidity, meaning that if you jumped into management for a year and you recognize, like, man, you know what? I thought this was for me, but it's not. There is an opportunity to still switch back over to an IC track. So let's look at what a life as a individual contributor might look like. I want to start with this here. By a raise of hands again, who's familiar with this idea of the T-shaped designer? A lot less than I thought, so it's a good thing I included these slides. As you come out of school or a boot camp, you've kind of got this narrow mind of what the skills are that encapsulate a UX designer. You've touched on a few of them at school. You've worked on them a little bit here and there. Maybe you've kind of drawn even a love or passion for one of those. Your scope is still pretty small. But as you get more experience, this T-shape kind of gets drawn out a little bit more. So let's say you get a couple more years of experience. Your eyes are open to a few other of those design craft skills. And maybe you've even gone a little bit deeper in those ones that you were passionate about. You've learned the skill sets, and you've kind of broadened your horizons a little bit. Again, with more experience, these designers who want to go down an IC track at Domo and at Awardco, I expect these designers to continue this T-shaped approach. I need you to broaden your horizons of, what you're familiar with, those skill sets. I need you to learn a little bit more about maybe analytics or UX writing, and that's not something that you focused on early in your career. I need you guys to kind of open up the window of opportunity and look at those other peripheral skill sets, but I also want you to go deep in something that you're interested in. So maybe for a few designers, it's going to be the visual design skills, or maybe it's animation and motion, maybe it's prototyping. If you want to go deeper, you start to develop this T approach. It doesn't quite look like a T, but as you're starting to get closer and closer to rounding out your skill sets, this T-shaped approach is what we're driving our designers to find. I'll also throw in a plug that if you're a designer who's already kind of building out these T-shaped skills, consider taking that T-shape from a thin font to a regular font to a bold to an extra bold even maybe. Figure out what skills you're passionate about and go deeper into them. The one thing that I really love to do with a team is recognize that if, I've got team members who are really passionate about prototyping, and I got team members that are really passionate about writing. Well, you can use these high-level individual contributors to level up the rest of the people on the team. Let the person who's passionate about prototyping do some training with the rest of the team to do more prototyping. Let the ones who are passionate about writing teach the team how to become better product writers. So in my ideal scenario, I've got a lot of T-shaped designers with different skill sets that they've gone deep in. So as an upper-level IC, what else is your responsibility? I say your responsibilities are to lead out. You become the lighthouse or the beacon. You're guiding your team, maybe even a junior-level UX designer. You're guiding them to project completion. It's also your responsibility as an upper-level IC to build alignment across your cross-functional teams and among other stakeholders who you're working with and operating with. You also become the voice of the customer. You need to understand the people that you're working for, their needs, their responsibilities, and you stand up for them. A day in the life for an IC, again, you're partnering with product managers, you're partnering with product leads and maybe even different stakeholders. You're defining what the roadmap looks like for your specific cross-functional team, what the strategy for that team is. But then you also mentor. You take those designers who are early in their career, you take them under your wing, and you begin to help them through a project, see it to completion. Then as a UX team as a whole, we're coaching, we're teaching, taking those T-shaped skills and sharing them with the rest of the team. Click. Click. There it goes. So how about a career as a manager? The skills that you will do, your day-to-day as a manager are a little bit different than, obviously your day-to-day as an IC. But before I can get into that too far, I need to take a pause because most designers don't just jump straight into management. They go into what we call maybe a player-coach role. Again, time for another analogy. Players, player-coach, coach. What are those different responsibilities? A player, obviously, someone who's on the field, on the court, someone who's helping the team get that win. Player coaches, think Tom Brady, think Kobe Bryant. In between plays, in timeouts, during halftime, these player coaches are talking to the other people on the team, the other players on the team. They're leveling up. They're trying to encourage what we need to do to win. They're taking on more coach-like responsibilities while still a player on the field. And then if you're a coach, obviously you're off the field, you're off the court. You recognize as a coach who the players are, what you have to work with, and it's your job to help your team find wins through those players on the field. So in design, what does this look like? Your players are the ones who are working on their design craft skills. They're working on those individual contributor skills. They're focused on shipping quality products, and they're finding joy in delivering. Now, if you've got a desire to dip your toes into more management, that starts to take a new look. In this player coach role, you might look like a designer who's in the trenches delivering product, but you've also got an intern. Or maybe you've got one direct report who you're working with, and you're starting to take on more of those management-like tasks and responsibilities. You're still focused on delivering, but you're also looking at up-leveling a designer that you're working with. In my experience, the player coach role is not scalable. You can't continue to add more players to that player coach's responsibility and expect that player coach to be an efficient designer at delivering and an efficient coach in leveling up the designers around you. It's hard to sustain. For those player coaches, oftentimes they're just stretched thin. It is, however, a great opportunity for those player coaches to get more experience in what those management tasks are. So I wouldn't shy away from offering those player coach responsibilities. Just recognize it's not a long-term thing that you can expect someone to do if you're trying to scale it. Finally, as you become a coach, your roles do change. Your output changes. Your deliveries change. You're not as much focused as being in the trenches as you are looking at things at a higher level. So as we jump back into this, I pulled out this quote from Julie Zhu. She says, "You become the steward of your reports' careers." And it was a quote that I really liked. I go, again, as a coach, I want to help my team find the wins. So let's look at Peyton Manning. He's another great example of a player coach. He had this idea that he personified, which was this player coach or quarterback mindset. The quarterback mindset that Peyton exuded was this: when his team won, and together they pulled out a win. But when his team lost, he lost. It was on his shoulders. As coaches or as managers, you need to be prepared to take on this mindset. It's a servant leadership mindset. You want to present a clear path forward, and if they hit a wall or if they lose, you take the brunt of that. They didn't lose, you lost. You didn't provide the way for them to succeed. If your team wins, if they hit a KPI or if they hit other DMW metrics, they are the ones that are ultimately responsible for those big wins. So you shoulder the blame and you pass along the accolades. So a day in the life. What does a day in the life look like if you're a design manager or a manager? You know, again, I recognize we got a lot of product managers in the room too. You transition from managing design to managing people. You conduct one-on-ones, you set OKRs, you set goals and follow up on those goals. You're having compensation conversations. You are the one who's also a steward of producing, protecting, cultivating culture, which was very hard to do if you were in a company that was working in an office for years and then you transition to working from home in 2020. Culture was one of those things that took a big hit. You've got to be able to protect that. You're hiring, which is fun. You're firing, and that really sucks. You're also part of more broader team strategy. You're not necessarily looking at one cross-functional team. You're looking at a series of teams and figuring out what is the bigger picture, what is the strategy here that we're aiming for. Mentorship is something that our designers at Domo were really passionate about, and I want to point out that mentorship doesn't necessarily align to a management track or an IC track. Mentorship belongs on both of those tracks. So how do you figure out what you want to do then? So here's a few questions that you can start to ask yourself. And quick note, I recognize most of you probably don't know me. I've run a podcast for the last 3 years. I really love talking to other creatives. And approaching this presentation, I kind of took the same route. I looked at the other creatives in the field, and I scheduled a handful of conversations. In fact, Taylor Palmer, who's speaking a little bit later this afternoon, he's one of those designers I talked to. And there's actually a couple others in this room who I talked to kind of formulate these questions. These designers were in that transition themselves maybe a couple years ago, or they're currently in this transition. I asked them, what questions would you want to have someone consider as they're trying to figure out where their career should go? Here's what we came up with. What do you naturally gravitate towards? When you start a project, what is the one thing that you are just excited to get into. Maybe you're excited to get into that discovery phase. Maybe you're just excited to talk to customers and understand their problems and their needs. Maybe you're really excited to get to the prototype at the very end. Like you want to start testing and you want to start prototyping and you love that iteration cycle. Maybe you love taking all your findings and reporting them back to stakeholders. Maybe you like presenting the vision or the path forward for a project. What do you naturally gravitate towards is something to consider here. What is currently giving you the most job satisfaction? I come back to this question all the time. What are you happy about at the end of the day? When you go home and you look back at the things that you accomplished that day, what is it that brought you the most satisfaction? Another way to think about it, when you wake up in the morning and you go, it's another day of work, what gets you going? What is the problem that you're excited to jump into? What is bringing you that satisfaction? Another question to ask is, what impact do you want to have at a given company? Again, where do you want to see the company? How do you want to contribute to it? What do others value most about your work? Or another way of sharing that is when someone shows appreciation for your work, what is it in regards to? Finally, what does life look like of the people who are sitting in the seat that you want to one day sit in? For example, I think a lot of you guys know Wade. Wade's coming out here and kind of being our hype man, right? If you want to be a Wade, what does life look like for Wade? Have those conversations. Go get a lunch with somebody who's sitting in that seat that you want to sit in and figure out what a day in the life looks like and figure out if that's for you. To review, I know you guys are trying to jot down some notes. Here's a review slide if you need to see those questions again. For the sake of time, I've got to keep on going here. Ultimately, the question that you need to ask yourself is, do you want to manage design or do you want to manage people? So starting today, here's a couple of things that I want you to consider. Here's what you can do. Maybe for a couple of you, you just need to go through those evaluation questions and that's enough. But for others who are still trying to figure out what that future might hold, I want you to do these things to help frame up the situation. Ultimately, if you can plan for it, then you can build for it. And that's kind of the approach I want you to take. Ask these questions, evaluate, and keep going. So here's some things that you can do to prepare for life beyond senior. Partner with your manager. I got time for a quick story. It was about 3 years ago. I haven't shared this story with very many people. It was about 3 or 4 years ago. I was actually on my way out the door of Domo. I had accepted another job position. I had turned in my 2 weeks notice, and I was ready to take on new responsibility at a new company. I got a call from our chief of product who, prior to that call, she and I hadn't had a whole lot of conversations. And she reached out and she goes, "Dillon, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm leaving." And she goes, "You've got this backwards. Meet me tomorrow for lunch, a Saturday. Meet me tomorrow for lunch and let's talk." We got together, we had a conversation, and she ultimately put the ball back into my court. And she goes, "What are you looking for next in your career?" And I said, "Well, I want some more management opportunities." And she goes, "You can't get that here?" I said, "Well, no one's really brought it up to me. No one's talked to me about it." And she goes, "Oh, and you brought it up to them." Well, no, I haven't. And she goes, "Well, how do you expect someone then to just read your mind and know the plan that we're supposed to be preparing for you? Your managers are not mind readers. If you've got a desire or a career focus, partner with them, talk to them. They can't read your mind." Additionally, I'm going to say, ask for opportunities to gain additional exposure. See what you can take off your manager's plate. Again, you're trying to dip your toes into this. So small risk, small reward. Again, see if you can start small by taking something small off their plate. There will always be someone who's better than you at what you do. The way they got there is the same way you will, and that's by focused practice and realistic evaluation. If you can do those two things, if you can be honest with yourself about what your skills are, maybe not be so financially incentivized, figure out what your skills are, plan for it, build for it, and you can achieve it. That's it. Thank you.
Give it up for Dillon.
Just kidding.
What? I was a little thrown off there.
I just didn't know what to do in between. Everyone just kind of stands around for a second.
I know. Never mind. Okay. What method do you employ when distributing multiple levels of designers across teams?
What's the question?
So if you say you had a cross-functional team, if you had multiple designers on that team, how would you, with your levels
Great.
that you have?
Okay, cool. Following you there. One of the things that I didn't show in that slide with those career tracks is we also have kind of a team lead badge. And I call it more of a badge because that team lead badge can follow you in a lot of different positions, but that's kind of the scenario that I'm envisioning, is that you're a team lead, so you've got other designers on that team that you're working with. Typically, we're going to partner somebody with more junior level skill sets with somebody more senior level. So distributing the work, we ultimately put that on that team lead. Figure out what you can do to delegate, improve the skills. That too is a process that is hard for a lot of people because you're starting to dip your toes into that management. And therefore, again, you've got to improve your management skills to make sure you're effectively allowing people to grow.
Absolutely. Do ICs do any coaching on your team, or is that exclusively for management? And
ICs are doing a lot of coaching. And again, like I mentioned, staff meetings, they're doing coaching. Again, at Domo, when we were running a lot of staff meetings, we would have 20 minutes set aside every other week at least for some IC to take a skill set that they've been working on and present it back to the team. So they're totally in the loop of up-leveling everyone else.
Would you recommend a senior level designer who feels their only option to an advancement in management is management, to just look for other jobs where they can see IC instead, or be IC instead?
Yeah, it's a tough question because I recognize, even in the preparing I was doing for this presentation, that a lot of people I was talking to were going like, yeah, we don't really have clear tracks established. So before you abandon all hope and say it's time to jump ship, I think the managers in this room would appreciate first saying, hey, have a conversation with me. Give us an opportunity to work on this and try and build a career path forward for you. If that's a fight that you're ready to, stick around for and help build and collaborate on, then great. If it's ultimately not, then yeah, you're right. It is time then to start looking. I might also add, if you're all right with this, that if you're in the interviewing process, every interview ends with, hey, what questions do you have? Ask, what does the career tracks look like here? What do you see my growth being here? What would you like for me to achieve in the next 5 years? What's the position you want me to grow into? Ask that in an interview. Figure out if they've got the design tracks for you there.
Great. When a designer reports to a non-designer role, what would you recommend for the designer to do when they feel they need to go to the next level and there is no defined path? So similar to that, where there's no defined path and they haven't defined it, what would you propose that they do to maybe propose that path for them?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm going to say partner with your managers. I don't know if there's a great answer or a silver bullet answer for this question, but again, even if your manager's not necessarily in your field, partner with that individual. Figure out what you can do to build a career track. Like I said, I think I talked to 12 designers in preparing for this presentation, only 2 of them had clear career paths forward. So most of them are all sitting in that same step going like, I think we need to document this. I think we need to figure out what those steps are. And again, just partner with your managers to figure out what those steps are. If you're trying to figure out what your skills align to, hopefully you found some sort of mentor in your field that can help have those conversations.
Awesome. So last question, how have you mapped levels and responsibilities to performance reviews?
So that's a good question. I maybe even breezed over this when I was talking about this. With all those levels, I said we have the opportunity to be promoted on a yearly basis. Opportunity being the key word there is criteria that you still need to hit. One of those slides, obviously, I don't show, but we used internally at Domo is we had a career growth matrix. We would use it on an annual review basis, and we would reflect on it on a quarterly basis, setting new OKRs to help improve in this growth matrix. And then it was also kind of the center point for one-on-ones as well. So the designers on our team knew the skill sets that they needed to achieve or improve upon to get to that promotion. And you start those conversations the full year before that promotion even takes place. And if you can then have those candid conversations to figure out like, hey, well, we need you to start working on this responsibility, or maybe you're even saying like, this individual's not dropping the ball, they've just have never been given the shot at it. We work out those details of how they can start working towards it so that they can hit that next level in a year's time.
Excellent. Well, let's give Dillon another round of applause. Thank you so much.
Thank you.